Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanshan Shri Rupam.
Yes, Prabhu, we can start. Nanda Pranam to everyone. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya. Today, we are very happy to have the association of His Grace Prasannatma Balaram Prabhuji. He'll be sharing Bhagavata from 4th canto, 30th chapter, verses number 7 and 8.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, and then was pronounced to all the devotees. I hope my audio is clear.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Giram Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna to all the devotees once again. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to do a small service for today. So today actually we'll be looking at 2 shlokas in the 4th canto, chapter 30. So we will look at verses 7 and 8. So just give me a minute. I'll go ahead and then share. Yeah. So the verse 7 is like this. Pinayatashta bhujamandala madhya lakshmya spradhachira parivruto vanamalayadayah barhishmatha purusha ahasutan papannan prajnyanadaruthaya sanghanavalokaha. The word-to-word meaning is like this. So, Pina, that is stout, Ayata, long, Ashta, 8, Bhuja, arms, Mandala is encirclement, Madhya, in the middle, in the midst of Lakshmiya, with the goddess of fortune, Spardhat, contending, Shriya, whose beauty, Parivrataha, encircled, Vanamalaya, by the flower garland, Adhyaha, the original personality of Godhead, Barhishmataha, the king Prachina Barhi, Purushaha, the supreme personality of Godhead, Aha, addressed, Sutan, the sons, Prapannan, surrendered, Prajanya, like the cloud, Nada, whose sound, Rutaya, by a voice, Sagrahna, with mercy, Avalokaha, his glancing. So translation and opened by Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Around the neck of the personality of Godhead hung a flower garland that reached to his knees. His 8 stout and elongated arms were decorated with that garland, which challenged the beauty of the goddess of fortune. With a merciful glance and a voice like thunder, the Lord addressed the sons of King Prachina Bharishad who were very much surrendered unto him. The purport, the word Adyaha is in this verse is very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin even of Paramatma and Brahman. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.27, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. The absolute truth begins not with the impersonal Brahman, but with the original personality of Godhead, Krishna. So when Arjuna realized Krishna's greatness, he addressed him in this way. Param Brahma Param Dhama Vitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. You are the Supreme Brahman, the ultimate, supreme abode and purifier, the absolute truth and the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. That is in Bhagavad Gita 10.12. The Brahma Samhita also says, Anadharadhar Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Supreme Lord is not caused by anything, Anadi, but he is the cause of all causes. The Vedanta Sutra says, Janmadhasya Yataha. The absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. The absolute truth is described as Adi Purusha. The absolute truth is therefore a person and is not impersonal. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschayata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gauravakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna once again. So, just seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here, so that I'll be able to speak the right words at the right time, in the right spirit, and doing this as a service for my Guru Maharaj, for the Guru Parampara, as well as for the pleasure of the Lordships. Hare Krishna. So today, like I said, we are looking at two verses. So this particular verse is a continuation. I mean, in the previous verses also, we've seen how the description of the Lord is given. And verse 7 actually is ending the description of the Lord when he gave the darshan to the Prachetas. So who are the Prachetas? They are the sons of King Prachina Barhi. So now the Prachetas, we know, the background is that they are the sons. There are 10 of them, 10 brothers, who actually did a lot of tapas under the water. They did for around 10,000 years. And what did they do? They recited the Rudra Gita. So we've seen this earlier. This Rudra Gita is the prayer for the Supreme Personality of God, which was given by Lord Shiva. Now, Lord Vishnu is pleased as they were reciting a pure devotee's song. I mean, this is what we saw, or the prayers of a pure devotee are being recited. So that pleases the Lord very much, that we have seen in the earlier shlokas, where so it is always good. The takeaway or the purport was that it is always good to recite the prayers of pure Vaishnavas. We know Lord Shiva is a pure Vaishnava. Vaishnava Yatha Shambhu. And he's also a Mahajan. You know, the 12 Mahajans, Swayambhu Narada Shambhu. Shambhu means Lord Shiva. So he is a Mahajan. So who are Mahajans? Mahajans are people who are experts in the subject matter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they are like the SMEs, the subject matter experts in with respect to the Lord. So when the prayers of such Vaishnavas are recited, then that pleases the Lord very much. And when the Lord is pleased, then the mercy definitely flows down. So in one way, we recite Brahma Samhita, which is again the prayer of Lord Brahma. So there is so much of, in fact, one of the acharyas was saying that it is always good to recite the Brahma Samhita every day. So in this way, and then of course Kunti prayers, then the Gajendra Moksha prayers. So these are all prayers that are offered to the Lord by the pure devotees of the Lord. And reciting them actually gives us a lot of mercy. Now the Lord actually is having a beautiful face. We saw that in the previous shloka. Then he's wearing a shining helmet, and then there are these golden ornaments that he's wearing. And then last class, I think Prabhu very nicely described the Lord as he appeared. And then he was riding Garuda Dev. And then he was standing on Garuda Dev, and then he comes. And then Garuda Dev is flapping the wings, and then the flapping of the wings is actually generating hymns which are praising the Lord. And then he's not come alone, of course, he's come with the sages, the demigods, the entourage of the Lord is always there along with him. So, and all of them are engaged in the service of the Lord. And in this way, the Lord makes the entry right into the water. And then he's giving darshan to the prachetas. Now, what is the form in which he has come? The form is also unique. It's the 8-handed form. And then the aspect that came out very clearly was how there is so much of variety in his creation. And then each and every creation has some distinctive feature, like the Kinnara Loka, the people can fly and so on and so forth. So much of variety is there in the creation. So this is what we saw in the previous verse. And then in this particular verse, the description of the Lord is continuing. So here, what is said, the Lord is having a flower garland. And that garland is not a short one. It is running right up to his knees, long one. And then he's coming with the Ashtabhuja form, or there are 8 arms which are holding weapons. So we saw the description of those weapons also. Now, another significant thing is the arms by themselves. So what is it? What does it say? It says here, Pinayasta. That means it is stout and it is long. So generally, when we say stout, it is associated with short. And when we say long, then it is slender or it is slim. So generally, the descriptions are like that. Somebody is having a stout and a short arm, or otherwise we'll say somebody has a slim and long arms. But here, it's different. The arms are stout as well as, and yet it is long. So that's so of course the Lord can come in any form, in any way. So here it is stout and long. And he, like I said, he's riding Garuda Dev, and then he's entering the water, and then he's standing on Garuda Dev. So the Achintya aspect was highlighted here. We can see how the Lord can come in any form. In fact, yesterday, the previous class, there was a question around it also. So the Lord can come in the Chaturbhuja form, which is a 400 form. So the most relevant example of whom he gave darshan was to Devaki and Vasudeva. So when he was born, and then he shows his Chaturbhuja form, and then Devaki Mata prays, and then so we know that pastime. So the Chaturbhuja form was that's the form in which the Lord decides to give darshan to Devaki and Vasudeva. And then there is also this other form, which is the Shadbhuja form, which is a 6-handed form, which actually the darshan, who had darshan of that was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he had the darshan of the Shadbhuja form, which we have seen. Why that happened was the Lord was very pleased. There's this particular pastime where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya actually takes care of him because he faints after having darshan of Jagannath. in Puri. And then the Lord is actually, there is a discussion that happens and so on. And then finally, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya realizes his folly or his mistake. And then he is paying obeisances. He surrenders to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is when this form is given. And there's this picture I'm sharing of the Shatbhuja form, where the Lord is showing, he's come in the six-handed form. Two arms are for the flute, the other two are for the bow and arrow, which is indicative of Krishna and of Lord Ram, respectively. And then the kamandalo and the stick, which is the indication of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here the Lord is trying to say that I am none other than the Lord, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is trying to say that I am none other than Lord Krishna or Lord Ram. So it's the same me. So in this way, the Lord gave that particular darshan. Now today we are talking and then about the Shatbhuja form, which is on the other side here I'm sharing. So this is the picture that I took from one of the temples in Kanchipuram, which is the Divya Desham. So where the Shatbhuja form is there. So we can see the Lord holding all the weapons. And this is the form in which he gives darshan to the Chetas. So now there are two aspects that we covered. So one is he can come however he chooses. So that's one thing that we saw. And then the other aspect that we would like to highlight is about the personal form of the Lord, which has to be noted. So now Prabhupada in the purport very nicely is bringing out the personalism or the form of the Lord and then how that is very significant. So why is it very significant? Because the Lord is Achintya, like we said. And then he is both impersonal as well as personal. So, we saw, the truth that exists in three forms. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan, Iti, Shabdyate in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti Tattvavidas, Tattvam Jnanam Advayam. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan, Iti, Shabdyate. So, in this shloka, we can see that truth exists in three forms, which is the Brahman, and then the localized Paramatma, and also the personalized feature of the Lord, which is the Bhagavan feature of the Lord, so which is basically referring to the personal form of the Lord. So the personal form is the source of everything. That's what Srila Prabhupada is saying in this particular purport. So from here we can understand how the personal form is the source of everything. The effulgence of the Lord is coming from the personal feature of the Lord. So the effulgence is actually, we are calling it as the energy of the Lord. And then the Lord himself is the energetic. So, Brahmano hi pratishta aham. So we saw that. And then even if you look at Brahma Samhita, it says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. So the personal form. And another Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. So the Sarva Karana Karanam is the Sachidananda Vigraha or the personal form of the Lord. So that is another Adhar, which is not having a start, which is the cause of all causes, and so on and so forth. So by this, we can understand how the personal form is the most superior. It is superior to the other forms. Why it is superior is because this is the source of the other forms. Even in Ishopanishad, there is this particular verse. It says, Hiranmayena Patrena Satya Stapitam Hitam Mukam. So which means that the prayer is such that it is saying, please remove the effulgence that is blinding me so that I can see your face or your form. So with all this, we can understand how, and then Prabhupada's purports are so nicely explaining about the personal feature of the Lord. And another significant thing is about the garland. So now, when anything is connected to the Lord, then it becomes very glorious. We know that. So when devotees connect to the Lord, then the devotees become very glorious. So anything connected to the Lord, it gets very glorious. So now, here in the description, it is saying that the flower garland, the beauty of the flower garland is enhanced because the Lord is wearing the flower garland. So it is actually vying with the beauty of Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi, we all know, is very beautiful. And the flower garland, because it is connected with the Lord, because the Lord is wearing it, it is actually vying for the beauty. It's trying to, there's this comparison that is made to Lakshmi Devi's beauty. So it is more beautiful or almost as beautiful as Lakshmi Devi because it is connected to the Lord. So this is another quality of the Lord. So here actually generally in the material world, what happens? So when we decorate ourselves or somebody is decorating oneself, the beauty of that particular individual gets enhanced by these decorations. So like a flower or some jewelry and so on. So that enhances the beauty of the wearer. Whereas in the case of the Lord, it's the other way around, where we cannot say the Lord was looking more beautiful because he was wearing a garland of flower and a shining golden helmet and so on and so forth. No, that's not how the references are made. Here it is the other way around, where the beauty of the garland gets enhanced, or the helmet's magnanimity or the opulence becomes more because the Lord is wearing it. So it's the other way around when compared to the material world, where the objects are used to enhance the appearance of an individual, whereas for the Lord, the objects become enhanced in their beauty because they are connected with the Lord, or the Lord is wearing them. So this is another aspect where in this shloka we are seeing. And Srila Prabhupada actually is bringing out the personal aspect of the Lord. See, Vaishnavas generally want to be connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the personal form of the Lord. And they are very happy to serve and to surrender to that form, and then move on and then keep doing their services. Whereas if you look at the impersonalist, that's not a very good situation. Why? Because they cannot progress. The progress is only why they cannot progress, because the progress is only by devotional service. So we know that we can progress only by serving, by devotional service. But then how can they serve an impersonal Lord? Srila Prabhupada actually gives these references, like how can you stitch a dress for somebody who's impersonal, or how can you stitch a dress for the Virata Rupa also. So in this way, Prabhupada is actually trying to drive home the point why the personalism is so important, and then we can understand that. And so thereby, because they are not able to do any service, and also there's another important factor, there is no surrender, because impersonal, how does one surrender to the impersonal? It's very difficult. And then it is, unless there is an object or a form, and then the surrender can only happen to a person. It cannot happen to an impersonal thing. So this way, there is no seva and there is no surrender. So it actually becomes a very horrible situation to be in. So a person who is inclined to the impersonal aspect of the Lord, even though it is the tattva, it is part of the tattva, but still they will not progress. They will stay put in the position where they are. They will stagnate. So, but then we are actually very lucky, or we are receiving a lot of mercy. Mercy means unqualified. We are not qualified, but then we get those mercies. And because of that mercy, then we are given the association of the Lord, the personal form of the Lord, by way of Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. So how can somebody remain an impersonalist after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, after hearing about the pastimes of the Lord, about the activities of the Lord? The Janma Karma Chime Divyam, the Lord says. So everything is so divine that one cannot remain an impersonalist. Generally, impersonalists are not inclined to Srimad Bhagavatam. But then once they take an inclination, then immediately they are no longer impersonalist. They'll become personalist. So we have many examples actually of this in history. The four Kumaras, if you recall, they were impersonalists first, and then they became personalists later on by the mercy of the Lord. In fact, they were attracted to the smell of the Tulsi leaves, and then thereby then they became personalists. And that's how then the Kumara Sampradaya has become a bona fide Sampradaya. And then Sukadeva Goswami, so when he was born, he was an impersonalist. Then by the mercy of his father, then Vyasadeva, then he hears the Bhagavatam and then he becomes a personalist. Then even in the recent past, like I mentioned earlier, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so he was an impersonalist, Mayavadi. But then, by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and by the wonderful darshan of the Shadbhuja form of the Lord, then he becomes a personalist. And then he surrenders to the Lord. He surrenders to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then there is another example even in Ramanujacharya's pastimes or during his period. Ramanujacharya had a guru when he was a boy, and then his name is Ved Prakash, who was an impersonalist. So there's a lot of difference of opinion that was there right then onwards. And Ved Prakash was not very happy with his disciple, that is Ramanujacharya. So in fact, he plans to kill him and all that. So if you read those pastimes, it's very different. But then actually later on, in the later years of his life, he actually comes and surrenders to Ramanujacharya, and then he takes to personalism. He becomes a Vaishnava. He becomes a disciple of Ramanujacharya. So you have a unique position where at first, the Guru and the Shishya, I mean, Guru is Ved Prakash, and then Ramanujacharya was a Shishya, a disciple. Later on, the roles get reversed. So Ramanujacharya becomes his Guru, Ved Prakash becomes a disciple. So thereby we can see how impersonalism is at a lower position when compared to personalism, because all of them who are impersonalists, they become personalists, and by the mercy of pure Vaishnavas. And then later on, he goes on. This Ved Prakash actually goes on, and then he does a lot of seva for Ramanujacharya. It was actually because of the prompting from his mother that he goes and then surrenders to Ramanujacharya and then becomes his disciple. And after he becomes his disciple, he actually writes or he translates some of the work. So he does a lot of seva in that level also, because he was anyway a learned scholar, because he was a guru at one point, and then he knew all the scriptures, but then he had missed the point of personalism, and that got corrected. And then they became wonderful personalists, or they became wonderful Vaishnavas. So these are some of the aspects which glorify personalism, which I just tried to cover. And then we can understand how this aspect is very important. So it is always good to read, hear, and then discuss about the personal features of the Lord, like we did in the last class, where wonderfully Prabhu narrated the description of the Lord with so much of bhava he was describing, which was so wonderful for all of us to hear, right? So we can, and this is actually the conclusion, this particular verse, where the description of the Lord continued, and then we saw the garland of the Lord, how it became very beautiful because it is associated with the Lord. So anything connected to the Lord, the intrinsic value of it goes up. That's aspect and that Prabhupada is actually covering in this particular verse. And then when we look at the thing, we'll move on to the next shloka. So just give me a minute to share that particular shloka. So this is verse number 8. So 438. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Varam Vrinidvam Bhadram Vo Yuyam Ne Nripanandanaha Sauhardena Prathag Dharmas Pushto Aham Sauhdudena Vaha. So what does that mean? Translation and by Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear sons of the King, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, which is devotional service. I am so pleased with your mutual friendship. I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me." This is what the Lord is saying. So the Lord begins to speak in this particular verse. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, since the sons of King Prachina Barhishad were all united in Krishna consciousness, the Lord was very pleased with them. Each and every one of the sons of King Prachina Barhishad was an individual soul, but they were united in offering transcendental service to the Lord. The unity of the individual souls attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity. So this is a word, I'll just read the sentence again. The unity of the individual souls attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity. I mean, we are not even discussing about satisfying the Lord. We are just even talking about attempting to satisfy the Lord, so which is our case in most of the instances. So we're just making an attempt, that's all. So in the material world, such unity is not possible. Even though people may officially unite, they all have different interests. In the United Nations, for instance, all the nations have their particular national ambitions, and consequently, they cannot be united. This unity between individual soul is so strong within this material world that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited. Members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leaning towards material things. Actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There is only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstances. This makes the Supreme Personality of Godhead a very happy and willing award all kinds of benediction to his devotees, as indicated in this verse. We can see that the Lord is immediately prepared to award all benedictions to the sons of King Prachina Barhishar. So this particular shloka is very significant. It's significant because the Lord is speaking. And when the Lord speaks, of course, what he is saying is of significance for all of us. And here, the Lord is actually happy. He's saying why he is happy with the Prachetas. Of course, they serve. But the most important aspect that is coming out in this is how they served jointly together as one, everybody engaged in one occupation, and that is the Lord more. So that's the first thing, observation that the Lord makes. Of course, as we move on, then you will see the Lord is actually speaking about various things. Why he is happy with the Prachetas, and then he is giving other instances or other qualities of the Prachetas. But the very first one that he is mentioning is about how they all worked together, or how they all did the devotional service together in mutual friendship. And that is why the Lord actually is wishing them good fortune. He says, you can ask any benediction. I'm very happy with you because you all worked together. Generally, it is very difficult for people to get along, especially brothers. Of course, there are many instances where brothers are working together. But then, by and large, we have seen like it's very difficult. At the drop of a hat, they can have disagreements over property or any of these things in the karmic world. So they are not neutral. In fact, if you look at a group of people, sometimes they may not get along well, but then they will not think much about it because they are not related. But then when group of people are related, it becomes even more difficult to stay put or to have this cooperation, and especially more so with the brothers. So we've seen history, we have seen so many instances where brothers are fighting for the throne, for position, for wealth, and so on and so forth. But then here with the Prachetas, it was different. So they cooperated and they had a common goal. The common goal was the service of the Lord. And this common goal of serving the Lord was, of course, it's a very noble goal. It's the best thing an individual can do. So Prabhupada writes here that all of them are individual souls. They are regular jivatmas who came together and then they did the seva, not for one day or half a day. We might come together when there is a function and then keeping aside our ego, we might work. But then we know that, okay, let this function get over. After that, then I can go back to my comfort zone or whatever. That's the mood generally that is there. I mean, most of us, we have this because it takes a lot of effort to work together. That is why we need a break, like one day a program was there and then we do that. And the next day we get tired out. We get tired out not because of the physical tiredness. It's more the mental tiredness in one sense, because we are stretching ourselves mentally to work together. Beside ourselves, we are trying to cooperate and then work together. And of course, there are many instances where we have succeeded. But then in the mind, there is so much austerity. It is done as an austerity. It is not done in a very happy, outgoing way, as in a very natural way. But it's not my nature, but then I'm doing it because that's the need of the hour. It's more like a duty bound thing, which is good again. But then we can identify and understand this, and then we get very tired, and then we need a rest the next day because no, I've had too much. I'm too tired. I mean, we'll not say we've had too much because we are doing devotional service, but then we might say, I'm too tired. I need rest. But the tiredness is more of the mental rather than the physical, in one sense, if we analyze. So it takes a lot of effort to cooperate, work together. And they did that, and then the Lord is identifying that. And so rightly, Prabhupada is bringing out this aspect. And Prabhupada is also bringing out the aspect about how in the material world it is very difficult to bring about this kind of cooperation. And he takes the example of the United Nations. So Prabhupada, so many times in his lectures, he has spoken about cooperation. He talks about how the flags are only increasing and nothing else is happening. The more flags means there is more disagreement or more differences of opinion and nothing else. But somehow they are calling it United Nation, which is a misnomer. They are not united because each one have their own personal agenda, and they are in it more so in the attitude of what's in it for me. All of us, we get into anything with that mindset. What's in it for me? But then from there, then moving on to this position of keeping Krishna in the center and then doing the service. Like I think I had mentioned earlier also, whether we want to please Krishna or we want to see Krishna pleased. So while both are correct, but the second one is more correct because by having this frame of mind of trying to see Krishna pleased, then we are taking ourselves away from the central point. And then we are saying central point is Krishna. Krishna has to be pleased, but then anybody can please him. That's the next understanding, right? So it's not necessarily that it has to be only me. So if somebody is trying to please Krishna, then maybe I'm not having that particular seva, but then I can assist that particular individual so that Krishna eventually will be pleased by seeing this particular cooperation also. So there's a lot of things in the mind. We'll have to. It's giving us a lot of opportunity to grow and mature in our thinking, so that we are able to come to this point that we are discussing now. I mean, of course, this is all theory, so we have a long way to cover. Especially me, I have a long way to cover because enviousness is part of our DNA, and it's there. I mean, we are envious when somebody is becoming successful in the material world, or even if we give up all the material world and then we see we have come to Krishna consciousness, but then we see somebody in Krishna consciousness doing more services, having a lot of opportunities, taking those opportunities and then delivering, then envy creeps in. So that's what Prabhupada says. Even in the Krishna consciousness movement, there is so much of discrepancies that we see in the mood, in the bhava. There is friction between devotees, even though everybody has the intention. The intention is there, but then the way to achieve that intention, there could be some variation. So somebody, I mean, it could be very simple, like, how you want to do a particular thing, and then somebody might say, we'll do it like this. Somebody else will say, no, like this. And then there is some sort of a standoff. And then the person whose idea got rejected is not very happy about it. So immediately then that person is sulking or he's trying to counter or they become judgmental. And then they'll say, oh, why is it that always it is like this? And then we start prajalpa or backbiting. And then, so one small slip up leads to so many aparads, So in fact, if you look at the ISKCON movement, I mean, all the people connected to ISKCON, this is our only weakness, which is cooperation. It could have been better. If you look at individuals, each one of them is a great devotee. So their personal sadhana is so fantastic. They do very nice personal sadhana. There is so much of sincerity in that endeavor, like following the rules, the regulations, or trying to do Ekadashi, trying to do the Mangalarti, waking up early in the morning. There's so much of effort as individuals we take. But then we falter at this point where we come together. That's the gap that we have, where we are not able to cross over that point where we stop seeing ourselves as individual. Up to the point of personal sadhana, we still see ourselves as individuals, and there is so much of importance around that. So it is for my own benefit. What's in it for me? We got in with that same attitude, right? So we try to do the sadhana also because it's an improvement for me. So in this way we approach. But then once we are guided well, and then we moving over to the next stage will happen only by cooperation. That is why our movement is, we are all supposed to be Brajanandis and not, sorry, we are supposed to be Goshtianandis and not Brajanandis. So Goshtianandis are people who actually work together, who take pleasure in the association of other devotees. Are we taking pleasure? The very sight of another Vaishnava should make us very happy. It should bring us a smile, and then we should say Hare Krishna, and then we can say how we can serve. So in fact, we have all of that, the understanding of the philosophy is fantastic for us. The theory, we get 100 out of 100 because we all know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is Krishna. So Prabhupada, in fact, gave full marks to that little girl Saraswati when he used to say, I mean, how can we preach? We don't know the philosophy. He says, look at Saraswati, little Saraswati. She just asks her, she just says, do you know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead? It is Krishna, and then she moves on. That is perfect teaching. You don't need anything more. So likewise, so in one sense, we are having the theory, we have perfect understanding, so that we can get 100 out of 100 on that. But then where we fail is the practical aspect. In modern world, science, if you take, it's very easy to score in theory, or rather, it is very easy to score in practicals, but then very difficult to score in theory. So there's a lot of effort that goes in to concentrate on the theory aspect. Because practicals, anyway, I know I'll get 30 out of 30 or whatever is the mark out of what I'll get. Whereas here in spiritualism is the other way around, especially when we are in the parampara, by the mercy of the parampara, we understand a lot of things. So theory is fine, but then we tend to fail, or there's a tendency to fail. I'm not saying we always fail, but there's a tendency to fail in the practical aspect. And the practical aspect, we fail because we are still connected to the body. And because of this connection to the body, Sarvopadi Vinurmuktam has still not happened. Tatvena Nirmalam, Narada Muni is saying. So unless we give up the designation, the identification of the body, and then consider ourselves as nothing, Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarurapi Sahishnuna. So that is why all the literatures of the Goswamis and the entire parampara, everybody is talking about the aspect of developing humility in the bodily form, because we become more and more humble. We consider ourselves less significant, then that becomes conducive for our devotional service. It becomes conducive for cooperation. It doesn't really matter. There's a wonderful example that is there of when Lord Ram was about to cross over the ocean and then move over to Lanka. We know that Vibhishana, with some of his people, he deflects, comes over to Ram's side, and then he surrenders. And then Lord Ram is actually checking, he's asking the other people their opinion. What should we do? Should we take him in or not? So there, Sugriva is saying that I think he's from the enemy side, he's a Rakshasa, he's a brother of Ravana, maybe he has an ulterior motive, so we should not take him. That was his opinion. Then Hanuman actually says the opposite. He says, even though he is all of that, but then I see some amount of truth in what he is saying, and then how he is speaking, his body language. So I think we should take him because he looks like he wants to surrender. He's like, he's not like the rest of them. He's different. So Lord Ram hears this, and then finally, of course, he takes him because he wants to give shelter. So even though both in this example, Sugriva and Hanuman, they both had the interests of the Lord in their heart, the best of the interests of the Lord in their hearts. They didn't want the Lord, they wanted the best for their Lord. That is Lord Ram in this case. So in the interest of Lord Ram's mission, Sugriva says, don't take him because it might become detrimental for our accomplishing our particular, the task that we have set out to achieve, because he might share the secrets and so on and so forth. He'll know the account of our enemy, our weaknesses and all will be known to the other side. You have those examples we can think of. So like this, he had the best of the interest. Whereas, of course, Hanuman also had the best of the interest of the Lord, but then he still said he had a different opinion. But both of them were equally dear to the Lord. It's not that, okay, I'll take what Hanuman said and then so Sugriva was belittled or anything. No, it was not like that. So Sugriva continued to be the commander. He was a king. And then everything moved on in the way it is supposed to move on without any problem. Whereas materially, such a situation would have resulted in a split or whatever, So like this, we have this wonderful example of how cooperation is very much necessary, even though we are aligned in the goal. Being aligned in the goal does not give us the right to transgress another person who's also equally aligned in the same goal. So we will have to be very mindful of that particular thing. And this aspect actually leads to a very serious situation, which is called as Vaishnava Aparad. So Vaishnava Aparad actually is a very dangerous thing. I was reading, Apa means going against, means against, and Radha means devotion. We are actually, Aparadha takes us away from devotion. We are actually going away from devotion when so anything that takes us away from devotion is aparadha. So Vaishnava aparadha is a very serious thing, and then it acts against our devotion. So this is one aspect that we will have to be mindful of. And there are many ways Vaishnava aparadha happens, and there are different types. But then that particular type of aparadha, which has this malicious intent or a desire to hurt someone, or find fault with them in order to make oneself feel better, or in order to make oneself be seen in the eyes of others as a better individual, or sometimes to get even with them because they had done something before and now I want to get back at them. See, last time you didn't listen to me, now I'll not listen to you, kind of a thing. Or retaliate. Any of these, the cases, the reasons could be many, but then it creeps into our minds, and then it stays, it lingers in our mind. And then what happens? Such thoughts linger, then thought comes, and then it becomes very strong, and then we are always thinking of it, and then it will relate to actions. We unconsciously also, we may not be conscious that the frown in the face when we see somebody who we didn't agree upon the previous time, we may not realize it, but the other person can make out. There is he doesn't seem to be very happy to see me. That's something that the other person can read. So when subconsciously it comes out, because those thoughts have been dwelling in us for such a long time, and we are not doing anything to get it out. So it is seen. So this is a very dangerous thing. And of course, there will be reaction. So what happens? What is getting sacrificed? Our progress in devotional service gets sacrificed because of Vaishnava Aparad. And Vaishnava Aparad is there wherever there is cooperation or wherever group of people are trying to get together and work. So we have to be very mindful of Vaishnava Aparad. It is not out of place, because if we have to reach that level of cooperation, then we should be free of Vaishnava Aparad. And and of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the acharyas have discussed in detail about this Vaishnava Aparad. Aparad means it's an offense if one commits Vaishnava Aparad. All kinds of his progress in devotional service will be checked. This is in the purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prabhupada is bringing out that aspect. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the same purport, he continues to say how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while he was instructing Srila Rupa Goswami, he's comparing devotional service of the Lord with a creeper. Lata, it is called, right? It's a creeper. So now the creeper needs a lot of protection. It cannot stand on its own. It is so weak. It needs a prop. It needs a support. It is so feeble, and then it can easily get trampled upon. So if it has to grow and then become strong and thick and well nourished, then it has to be propped. And then then what happens? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that there is a lot of stress he mentions in the protection from the offenses. So the only way you can keep the Bhakti Lata growing is by protecting it against offenses. And the primary offense is the Vaishnava offense or aparad. So this is an aspect, because it says that even if we have committed some other kind of materialistic sins, it can be corrected. But Vaishnava aparad is very, very difficult. It cannot be corrected by normal means. And then we have seen so many examples in the past. So the first example that comes to our mind is the Durvas Muni example, where he commits a Vaishnava aparadh by insulting a great Vaishnava, King Ambarisha. And then for 1 year, I mean, he's attacked by Krishna, becomes very angry. Whereas actually in that instance, he doesn't take offense. Ambarish Maharaj is not taking offense. But then the Lord reacts actually the moment he is insulted. And then he sends his chakra and then it follows him and then he's trying to save himself. And then he goes to all the planets. So nobody is able to save, including Lord Vishnu when he goes there to the Shvetadvipa. He's also not able to do anything. Then he says, go back to King Ambarisha. If he forgives, then the chakra will come back. Otherwise, I cannot take it back or I don't have the power. So then he goes and then he surrenders. So there is a great learning there. So the only way a Vaishnava aparadh can be corrected is by begging for forgiveness. And begging for forgiveness or taking the dust of the devotee whom we have made an aparadh and then putting it on our head or begging for forgiveness is the only way that it can be countered. Otherwise, it cannot be. So there are many examples. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is saying that his own mother, Sachi Mata, so exalted personality, she makes a Vaishnava aparadh. He calls it as Vaishnava aparadh because she blames Advaita Acharya for the misfortune of hers, where both her sons have ended up becoming sannyasis. So that's an aparadh that she is making. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually tells her that you will only be able to progress in your devotional service once you actually beg forgiveness from Advaita Acharya. And then she actually does that. And then she also, the situation is such that she is able to touch the feet of Advaita Acharya. And then in this way, there is a pardon that happens for her. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually says that this particular Vaishnava aparadh, he gives a nice comparison. He compares it to a Mada Hathi, that is a mad elephant. So what happens? So there's this wonderful garden, let us say, where the Bhakti creeper is growing so well. So we have taken so much of pains to cultivate that particular garden. And then you just allow a mad elephant to walk into that garden. Then what happens to the garden? I mean, it's obvious, right? It is going to get trampled and everything, the beauty of that garden is going to vanish in no minute. And Vaishnava aparadh is like that. While we do so much of sadhana, then we are trying to practice and then do devotional service and then making some advancement and so on and so forth. But then if we allow a mad elephant to enter into that particular garden that we are creating for ourselves, then everything is finished within that garden. And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying. So it pollutes our Krishna consciousness. So Vaishnava aparadh is something that is very, very, we have to be very mindful of. And then always understand that it will take away our bhakti. See, we might say neha vikramano asti. So I mean, any devotional service we do, it is protected. So how is it that it is getting destroyed? So here the acharyas say that yes, it is not. Neha vikramano asti is also there, where swalpamapi asya dharmasya, and then there is this thing, it is preserved for us. But then we begin to stagnate. So the moment the Vaishnava aparadh happens, then we don't progress, even though all the merits of that particular bhakti that we have done in the past is there, but then we are not able to progress. It is like a check, it's like a barricade, it's like a red light. So you have stopped, you have the engine running, everything is there, you want to go, but then you're stopped by the red light or by a traffic jam or whatever, however you want to compare it. So we'll not be able to move aside. Unless the red turns green, we'll not be able to move ahead. But we are not going back. We have come, see, we're moving in a certain path, and then there's a destination to go, and then we are stopped at a red light in between. It doesn't mean that we have gone back to the place where we started. No, we're staying there, but then we are not able to move forward. And then the move forward will only happen when the red turns to green, when the Vaishnava aparadh is forgiven by the person. So we'll have to identify the Vaishnava aparadh, identify the person to whom this aparadh is done, and then beg for forgiveness. Thereby, then it is like the signal turning green, so we'll be able to move further. So the best way is not to get into a situation where we are forced to stop at the red. We have a continuous green. So in fact, there are many other examples. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually insisted on this so much. And then he takes the example of Maharaj Raghugana. So, in the past times where Jada Bharata. So Bharat Maharaj, who became a deer, and then he was Jada Bharata, he was born as Jada Bharata. Then he is made to carry the palanquin of the king, the then king, who was King Raghugana. And then when he is carrying him, it's actually a aparad. He ended up engaging pure Vaishnava like Jada Bharata in his own personal service. So that was a big aparad that he committed. And then he realizes it when Jada Bharata begins to speak, and then he realizes such a noble person. So immediately, the moment he hears Jada Bharata speak, he comes down and then he pays obeisances, he begs for forgiveness, and then thereby he is pardoned. And that way he is able to, come out of that particular trap. So we've seen many examples are there like that. I'm just taking a couple of them. And then even Saudhari Muni, he makes a Vaishnava aparad by denying Garuda Dev his food, which is the fish. So thereby, Garuda Muni actually is making a Vaishnava aparad. So why all these so many examples, so many different types of examples? We can understand how Vaishnava aparad is not just limited to a certain particular segment or a certain kind of aparadhas only. It can happen in any way. It can happen by denying somebody. It can happen by using the Lord or a devotee of the Lord to gain something personally. So that also is an aparadha, right? Like there's the example of this old lady who climbs on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to have the darshan of the Lord. Though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not take offense, and then the person who actually asks her to get down is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually saying that don't do that, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually seeing the aspect of her eagerness to see the Lord was so much that she didn't know what she was doing. But then from the view of the disciple who was along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was an aparadh because she used Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. She actually climbed on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then to have darshan, so which is not correct. So it's an aparadh again, but then she didn't get any this thing for that because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being the Lord, he did not take offense. So this way, this is another example that was discussed here. So by hearing all this, we can understand that Vaishnava aparadh can happen in various ways. It's not fixed. It is not that it's only a particular way. That's a Vaishnava aparadh. The rest is not. And then who is a Vaishnava? Anybody. It's not necessary that, somebody might say, because we see in the scriptures, a pure devotee is, we should not insult them and so on and so forth. Who are we to judge whether he is a pure devotee or not? We might take the shelter of the fact that, no, but he is not a pure devotee, so it's okay. I don't think Vaishnava aparadha will happen to me. That itself is a big aparadha because we are thinking that person is not a pure devotee. We're being judgmental and so on and so forth. So it's a very careful path for us to tread, especially when we are treading it with other people, when we were trying to cooperate. But then we need to identify this. We need to then seek the mercy of those people, of all the Vaishnavas with whom we are associated with, so that we are able to come out of this aspect of Vaishnava aparadha or future Vaishnava aparadhas. Because somewhere, I think in one of the lectures I was listening, thought comes. Yes, thought comes. Our thought, mind is so much that we immediately are able to pick a fault in a particular seva or anything. But then if you allow that thought to convert into action when it is not needed, like immediately we might conclude, when we become judgmental, that means then we are moving ahead. We are not just allowing it as a thought. We are moving ahead. We're saying, what sort of a devotee? Look what he is doing or what she is doing. That's not right. Okay, there might be an offense, but then the moment we judge a person or we, we typecast that particular individual for that particular aparadh or for that particular mistake, then it becomes aparadh from our side. So we have to be very careful. These are very subtle things. In fact, Guru Maharaj explains these in one of his lectures so wonderfully. And then he calls out saying that these are very subtle things which we need to be aware of. And we have to be aware, cognizant, and work towards it. Definitely praying to the Lord and then working in cooperation. So the best way, if it's too confusing, is to just cooperate and then just carry out what we have to do. Being in Madhyama Adhikari is something that is very much appreciated. So in this way, we will have to ensure that we are not getting into this trap of Vaishnava Aparadh, but we are actually cooperating with others, and that's the aspect that pleases the Lord. That's what we are seeing in this particular verse. So I think I almost exceeded the time. I'll stop here. If there are any comments or questions anybody has, please go ahead. Otherwise, over to you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing the wonderful nectar on the three key themes of these two verses. Actually, there is a nice relation you have established. If we avoid the offenses, we can work cooperatively, and if we work cooperatively, we'll be able to see Krishna pleased, and then we can see Krishna. Thank you very much. Devotees can unmute themselves to share any reflections, or if they have any questions, please ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavatanam. I think before that, we want to pick one announcement. We want to make an announcement. There is a small change in the schedule of Krishnananda Prabhu, who is visiting our temple from tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we will have a regular class at 7:15. Originally, we announced that we will have morning class at 8 o'clock by Krishnananda Prabhu, but due to schedule change, Prabhuji will start giving classes from tomorrow evening. So there is a new flyer sent out. So tomorrow evening we will have Prabhuji's class at from 7 to 8:30. Tomorrow morning we will have regular Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya class at 7:15 by Grace Narahari Chaitanya Prabhu. On Saturday morning 8 to 9 we will have a class by Grace Krishnananda Prabhu. On Sunday, as usual, actually Saturday evening as well, we will have class by Krishnananda Prabhu, and then Sunday morning we will have Sunday feast class by Prasannatma Prabhu. So kindly take a note of this change. Tomorrow morning we will have regular classes at 7:15 as usual by Narahari Chaitanya Prabhu.
Very well. Thank you for that update.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for the very nice class. I think there was a beautiful narration about the Lord's personal aspect. And also you normally mentioned that, when somebody wears a garment or any other jewels, we say that, because of the jewel, they are looking beautiful. But in Lord's case, it's always otherwise. The jewel becomes beautiful when it is put in the neck of the Lord. It was very beautiful. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So if there aren't any comments, then we can complete the session. You can end the session today. So offering prayers to all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatrubhyasya kripa Hindubhyevacha Padidanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnava Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gurudev ki jai. Shri Kanath Parmanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all. That was pronounced to all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.